They're back!
Welcome to Lay's Reviews. Having already talked about the first Poltergeist movie from 1982, today I'll be talking about the sequel, Poltergeist II from 1986. Of course, if you haven't seen my video on the first Poltergeist movie, you can go and watch that if you want to know my thoughts about that movie. I will try to keep it light on the spoilers. The first 30 minutes of the movie, I'll elaborate a bit on what happens in the plot. After that, I will keep it more restricted to things I find interesting to talk about, more so than actual things that are very crucial for the plot. Just so that I can talk about the movie and recommend it to you without actually having the experience spoiled for you. That being said, there are some things that I find very important to talk about because they are the reason why I want to recommend the movie. For that, I have to talk about things that happen much later in the movie, but I'll try to do it in a way that actually doesn't spoil how things unfold. I should also note that this is a direct continuation, a direct sequel to the original, the first Poltergeist from 1982. So if you haven't seen that movie and don't want it spoiled, you probably shouldn't watch this review, as I will talk about some other things that happen towards the end of the first movie as they are crucial for the plot.
I'm suggesting that you leave before I have to get snooty.
That out of the way, let's get started. The movie opens up with two Native Americans performing a ritual. It's not really clear what they're doing, but one of the Native Americans is seemingly touched by something, and that something appears later in the movie to be some kind of higher spiritual power that, akin to the older medium of the first movie, he is somehow in touch with the spirit realm, but also he has this deeper understanding, but also deeper connection with other spiritually attuned people, like he can mentally communicate across vast distances with the older lady. At least that's what it would seem. This movie is much more supernatural than the first movie. It took the supernatural dial and just dialed it up to 11, which is also why I like the movie. And of course, we'll get into that later. And then it quickly jumps to the family from the first movie. Because they now lost their house, they have moved in with the mother of the husband. It's unclear how much time has passed. Seemingly a lot of time has passed because him and the wife are having arguments over how quickly they should look for a new house. He's trying to have insurance covering that the house disappeared. Of course, the insurance companies find this weird, and it's not really covered insurance policies that your house suddenly disappears out of nowhere. He's not in a hurry to find a new house, to find a new job. Of course, having lost his previous job, partly because the insanity it brought to the family, but also partly that he realized his old boss was an asshole that built cul-de-sacs on burial grounds. Like that's the guy who was responsible for everything in the first movie. Having realized that, he no longer wants to work in real estate, and the woman, being a housewife, also doesn't have an income. So that's why they have very little income to really support the family, to find a new place to live. They're not in a hurry, but the money is running thin at this point. At least that's what it seems at the beginning of the movie. The grandma, on the other hand, is taking more of an interest in the daughter, the young daughter that was sucked into the TV in the first movie. And she's telling the daughter, asking her, ever since you were born, have you sometimes been aware of things other people have not been aware of? Have you known things without knowing how you knew them? It's basically The Shining, that this girl has a special ability. She's born with a spiritual attunement that makes her aware of things that other people are not aware of. She can sense the dead, sense evil spirits, and the grandmother also has this ability. So she understands the daughter, whereas the husband and the mother, they are not really aware of the daughter's special abilities, even though they've gone through these things, and they're also hesitant to believe her. Of course, they're also just trying to cope with all the things that they experienced in the first movie, having gone through this extremely traumatic experience together. The wife, of course, was sucked into the other dimension as well. The husband is dealing with having, of course, all these financial burdens. It's this 80s patriarchal society, so he's also struggling with having to be the head of the family, to not really show his emotions too much, to overcome these obstacles, the one finding the house, the one finding a job, the one providing. That's basically his role. Like in the first movie, it's a very lovable family. They have a very good connection, a very strong connection. They seem to be a very healthy family. So it's not that he is abusive or toxic in any way, but one dynamic I like about this movie is it shows how the trauma of the first movie and the trauma of things that continue to happen tear the family apart, how they cope with it in different ways. He starts drinking, he becomes an alcoholic, he just can't cope with it, but he's of course trying to move on. and be there for his family, but he can't because he's just too mentally distraught to really be there. It's a very nice dynamic. Of course, the mother was more of the center of the first movie. She was the one who had more of an interesting development mentally and physically throughout the movie. This time it's more the dad that has the interesting development, I would say. There's one thing I should say, the older daughter is no longer in the movie. I don't know where she is, she's just written out of the movie. So we only have the young daughter and the young son. The daughter is no longer there. What happened? She's barely even in the first movie, so where is she? I don't know where she is. I don't know why she's written out of the movie. It doesn't matter too much. One of my big criticisms of the first movie was that she was just written out of the movie. Okay, so I've established the main dynamics of this family. What then happens is that while at the mall, the daughter sees this weird, scary-looking, tall guy dressed a bit like an old priest. He's very, very thin, very tall, very frail. Honestly, really creepy-looking guy. And nobody else is noticing him. He shifts through people like a proper ghost, a proper phantom. People walk straight through him, and he walks straight through other people. But the daughter sees him. Not only does he see him, she's become lost in this mall. The mother and the son have not realized that she's missing. They are looking at clothes. So while she's out looking for her mom, this tall man approaches her, telling her to come with him, to ignore the mother and come with this guy. Who is this guy? He doesn't really tell. And she's of course scared of him. She can sense something is wrong, and he starts playing with her. And that's when the mother finds him. Or she finds her and him. That means the mother can see him. Nobody else saw him. The mother sees him. The son sees him. The daughter sees him. This mystical entity, he's invisible to everyone else but this family. He materialized himself for this family. What he is, I'm not going to spoil. So after this happens, the grandmother dies. She passes, but before we even know she passed, the phone rings in the middle of the night. The girl, the daughter, picks up the phone and says goodbye to her grandmother giving her some last messages of support, telling her to be true to herself, to listen to this gift she has, to trust in herself and her abilities, spiritual abilities. And it is then revealed that she talked to the ghost of the grandmother, or the spirit of the grandmother. And this is also around the time where things start getting wacky. We are about 20 minutes into the movie, 15-20 minutes, and we already see some of the nice special effects from the old one. This weird smoke, or whatever you would call it, coming out of the phone, spirits coming out of the phone. The grandmother or some other entity being in the room, where in the chair, talking. That's actually one thing I don't like about this movie. The spirits talk, but they only do it once, and I think it's the grandmother spirit. And the family then tries to escape. They are being told that they can't run away from this thing. The Native American actually shows up around this time in the movie, tells the family that they can't escape from this thing. They have to tackle it head on, that this thing has chosen them, and it's after the girl, it's after the daughter, and there's no escape. They have to face it head on.
Head on. Apply directly to the forehead.
The dad doesn't listen. He drives away. At a diner, this woman gets possessed or gets mind controlled by the dead grandmother. Well, I guess it's possessed then. To tell the family again that there's no running away, they have to tackle it head on. Then in the same place, they meet a Native American who is again telling them, she's right, you have to tackle it head on, and they're fine. Okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. We are distraught. We have nothing to do. Our family is in mess. It is in tatters. Our mental health is completely gone at this point. There's no other option. Let's just take in this Native American and listen to him. Again, the dad is very reluctant. The mother is much more supportive of the idea. And he does seem to have some way to understand and support the daughter. Also, he seems to be in contact with the medium of the first movie. She is again in the movie, not that much. And she also knows something is wrong with this entity that is haunting them. She is also trying to help, showing up to tell the wife that because she's been on the other side, she has a much better understanding of these things that other people do, even though the woman, the mother, the wife, claims to not have any clue what's going on and any clue who this evil entity is, then actually maybe she does. And I think that's where I will leave the plot. So this movie is about the daughter having special abilities and being the target of an evil entity that wants to take her with him or with it to the other side. Does that mean killing her? It's not even hell. It's not even heaven. It's not even the realm of the dead. It's another dimension. What does that mean? The father is struggling to cope. He is kind of trapped by this Reagan-era idea of the core family unit. He has to be the provider and completely fails. In failing to take care of his family, he, of course, also fails at representing the proper male figure as is expected of the time. This affects him a lot. He becomes essentially useless. He can't protect his family. He has to have other people help him protect his family and becomes an alcoholic for that reason. And the Native American tries to help him find himself in all of this. I might be reading too much into this, by the way, because the movie doesn't focus that much on it, but it's definitely there in the movie on some level. And again, the dad is actually quite good throughout all this. He's quite a good character. He's quite well developed. Again, you root for the family. You want them to succeed. You want them to survive. You want them to thrive, which is really good, which is why I also really like the first Poltergeist. And while the dad is basically out of the picture, not able to do anything, the mother also tries to help, but she's also failing. None of them can really do anything against this entity that's haunting them. Only the daughter might have their... And there is this unstoppable force, seemingly unstoppable force after them, that can manifest itself in many ways. And not only that, being open to the spirit realm, or whatever it is, other forces, other deceased entities, other whatever they are, spirits, are also seeking out the family. Although it's actually not really revealed if they are just other manifestations of the entity, or the disciples of the entity, or if they are indeed other entities. There are only very few scenes where this actually happens and where they're visible, so it's difficult to really understand if they're just different forms, different manifestations, or different entities altogether. I should also say, what about the young son? He's basically no agency in the movie. He's mostly just a victim, someone there to distract the parents, while the girl is actually the one who's in real danger. Basically just a victim or a potential body count. For example, there's one very nice scene where his braces become this entangled web, just capturing his face, entangling it. It's a very nice scene, reminded me a bit of the tree in the first movie. Honestly, this does tread some of the same water as the first movie. It's different enough to work in its own right. So having said what I want to say about the plot, I want to talk about some of the things I liked and some of the things I didn't so much like about the movie. I think some things are a bit too underdeveloped and underused. This tall man is scary. It's honestly just, I think they could have used that to more. It's like there are two phases of the movie, and the faces are not that well connected. And I say face, not face, but face. There are two phases in the movie, two chapters in a way, two acts. And whatever is connected to this guy is the weaker part. So the first 45 minutes of the movie, I don't find that intriguing. I like the dynamics, some of the things I talked about. I like some of the things that happen. But honestly, this movie just mostly had me feel a bit confused. I was not that much into the plot. I was not that intrigued by the movie. I was not that immersed. There were some things that didn't really connect in the way I wish they would have. And I think a lot of them has to do with not really understanding what's going on. Some of the dynamics, family dynamics and other dynamics being a bit less developed. And not really understanding where the movie wants to go with this thing. And again, this whole spooky figure, albeit I like it, I think it's not used as well as it could be.
It's not sexy, it's animal.
No, it's not sexy at all.
What I will then say why I can really recommend this movie. It's wacky. It's all over the place. After the first 45 minutes, I was just boom, hooked. I stopped thinking and was just there to watch the spectacle, not knowing what came next. Because this movie throws so much at you. It's so disconnected. It really makes very little sense. That's kind of what I tried to say. I don't understand how this works, what actually is the evil entity in this movie, what actually is going on. But there's so much interesting to look at. It's such a sight to behold. It's such a visual and sensual experience that I really liked it. It has so many monster designs. These are practical effects. Of course, also the special effects are kind of cool. Of course, they are outdated, but I do like this whole drawn-on, painted-on aesthetic of them. But the actual creature designs in this movie are amazing. Now, this tequila worm that develops into a huge maggot-like creature that gives birth to this weird torso monster. You have this weird caterpillar-like made of human faces. You have demons or whatever, or angels flying in a vast emptiness. This movie really just throws stuff at you. It's really visually interesting. I am a sucker for practical effects. I'm a sucker for rubber monsters. I'm a sucker for all these things that you don't really get anymore. I mean, the original The Thing is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's just all rubber monsters. I really love the physicality of it. The practicality, the physicality. The first movie had this as well. One of the things I really praised the first movie of was also the physicality of it. The visceralness, the ectoplasm coming out from the other side, out of the portal, the monster designs, the face coming off. All these things are very good, and this movie has even more of it. In more of a spectacle sense, in more of an overblown sense, the first movie was more coherent and consistent. This movie is a bit more off, a bit like how the first Hellraiser is quite a confined story. That where you understand the story and where the story is really good, and then you have all the of course the Cenobites and everything on top of that, and then Hellraiser 2, much less of a coherent or at least a worse plot, but very visually interesting, taking more place in this other dimension, giving the opportunity to bring all these other spectacles in. This is very much the same. I would say if I could describe this movie, this is The Shining meets Poltergeist meets The Exorcist meets Hellraiser. This is quite a thing. Not the thing, this is quite a thing. I liked it. It's not amazing, but this is definitely a movie I want to watch again. And if you like the first Poltergeist, I will say this is not actually a good sequel. This is not what I would call a good sequel, but it is a good movie. At least it had enough of a spectacle, it had enough of a visual stimuli to keep me really engaged and immersed in the second half. And yeah, I can recommend it. I had a good time. It wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. It wasn't the best sequel, but I liked it. I think it's interesting. And of course, this is not where I end. There are 2 more movies to talk about, but for now, take care until I upload a new video. You can maybe follow me. Sorry, not follow me. That's another channel portal media. You can subscribe. You can stay tuned to see when the next video comes out.
You want some more? Huh?
I'm looking forward to talking about the next film. I don't know if I should be. I haven't watched it yet. It might be garbage and I might hate it. You'll see eventually when it comes out. Anyway, take care. Thank you for watching. Have a splendid day or evening or whatever time of the day it is. Bye. Ciao.